Hello, this is a new podfic called The Ghost of Those Failed by Society, written by Han_99. Author summary. Eraserhead just wanted to end his patrol the way it started, with little to no action and enjoying the warm weather. However, it's ruined by a boy humming an eerie tune that sent chills down his spine while sitting at the edge of the roof. If that whole incident didn't have him questioning his sanity, then the next time he runs into a boy on the same roof, not even a week later, and singing the same tune, well then he definitely sinks into the mindset even more than he already has. The society is cruel and karma is a bitch. Trigger warnings for these chapters. Implied and reference suicide. Chapter 1. Boy on a Roof. Aizawa grunted as he landed on another rooftop and looked down at his watch. Only an hour to go until I'm done with the patrol. It was a quiet night, almost eerily so. He hated that. It always meant there was something bigger in the works that would pop up later and cause him less sleep and a resounding headache. Just thinking about the possibilities already caused a dull ache to start intruding on his thoughts, as if to make the paranoia real. It didn't help that UA classes start in 2 weeks, and his class this year looks like a rowdy and annoying bunch. Maybe they have no potential like last year's class, and I can expel them all. That would save me a headache, and I catch up on sleep for whatever this damn night was alluding to. He shook his head immediately after that thought. No, he was being paranoid. Nothing was going to happen just because of a slow night. He peered back down at his watch and groaned. 45 minutes to go. He took a quick stretch, then broke off into a sprint in order to jump on to the next rooftop and finish his patrol route. He didn't make it very far, only a couple of minutes and maybe 4 more rooftops when he heard it. It was low and almost unnoticeable if his ears weren't trained to pick up on the slightest of noise. It came with the territory of his work after all. A missed sound that can tip you off to an attack, or to a victim who is being gagged or their mouth is covered by their assailant, usually meant death or severe injury to himself or the victim. However, there was something different about this tune. It sounds like a child humming a tune that sounded almost upbeat and catchy. But at the same time, it was as if the sounds mixed with the slight breeze, as if they were one and the same as they brushed against his exposed skin. It started at the base of his neck and traveled down his spine and spread throughout his body, making his skin crawl and littered goosebumps. He suddenly felt a little chilly, which was odd considering it was a night on the warmer side. As he followed the sound, the pitch and tune never changed. In fact, they seemed to be humming the same tune over and over again. He was only a roof jump away when he spotted them. He could only see their side profile, but they were pale, and that was saying something considering it was dark, and there was very little lighting illuminated from the streets below. But what really caught his eye and immediately had him on edge, with a growing pit in his stomach, was that the kid was sitting on the edge of the roof, dangling his legs over the side, as he swung them gently back and forth. His head was slightly tilted back, as if he was gazing at the stars, and he supported himself on his outstretched hands behind him. Aizawa didn't want to jump to conclusions, but as he began to assess where he was going to jump onto the roof, and how to make enough noise as to not startle the kid, and not have him fall, the humming turned into a mixture of humming and words. I did it, and parachute were the only words he can really make out, as he jumped to the kid's roof. When he landed, the lyrics became clearer, but the chill it brought was also crystal clear. He stood frozen in the same spot he landed. He couldn't move. It was as if the air on the roof was both smothering with a dreading feel to it, but also light and airy at the same time, like a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. It was horrible, and all he can do as the blood in his veins turned cold, and the breeze whispered the lyrics into his ear as if the kid himself was standing right next to him, was watch as the kid slowly rose to his feet, singing that song over and over again. I did it, I did it. I jumped, I stepped right off that cliff without a parachute. I looked over the edge and saw the view. The boy went to his toes as he stood over the edge and looked down at the streets below. If something I can never do, and no part of me knew how, but the moment came. He leaned back with his hands clasped behind his back as he turned ever so slightly and looked at a specific spot on the roof as if someone was standing there. And it had to be now, so I did it, I did it. I jumped. He turned fully and stared directly into his eyes. His face was clearly blank, and his hands slowly rose to be stretched out beside him like a T. The only thoughts running through Aizawa's head were the words no, and move, goddammit, on repeat. I stepped right off that cliff without a para. He leaned back with a small smile gracing his lips. Shoot. He fell. He fucking fell. No, 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 no. His capture weapon reacted to his thoughts as everything he felt before disappeared in an instant, and his body plunged forward to the edge, praying that he would feel the familiar feel of his capture weapon grabbing onto and being tugged when it caught and held something or someone. But it didn't. He looked over the edge and stopped. There was no body splattered on the vacant street below. Nothing. Thoughts started to race through his mind. Was it a quirk? He looked up to the neighboring roofs, into the sky searching for the kid. Did the kid have wings? Did they have some sort of teleportation quirk? What the hell? Where is the damn kid? If this was a prank, he did not like it one bit. His frantic state was interrupted by a strong and constant buzz in his pocket. He slowly took it out of his pocket with practiced ease as he continued to look at the spot where the kid should have been. He grimaced. Yeah, that's not a thought he wants to dwell on at all. He answers the phone, and a very concerned blonde's voice filters through. Sho, where are you? Are you okay? He takes a second to breathe and collect his thoughts. I'm fine, Zashi. Don't worry. Just got caught up in something. He sighs. Yeah, his husband isn't going to like that explanation, but he'll have to wait for a better one because honestly, there really isn't one at the moment. He also takes that moment to actually look at the time. He winced. It was an hour and a half past when he was supposed to be back from patrol and home. He also saw a few texts from Naomasa, asking if he was all right. Shit, how long was I up here? Sure. His husband's voice was soft and gentle. He couldn't help closing his eyes as he listened. What's wrong? I can't really explain it right now, especially over the phone. But let me head into the police station and check in. Then I'll come straight home and explain. It was the only thing he could think of to say. It was logical. He had to check in with Naomasa, fill out some paperwork, then he can go home. I'll meet you at the police station instead. That even, calm, and logical voice may work on everyone else, but not me. I've known you for too long. God, he loved his husband. He gave a grunt of approval, and with a quick and soft, "Love you, Shota," The call was over, and he stood up ready to leave. After using his capture weapon to safely reach the ground, he checked one more time for any sign that a child had been there, and when he found none, he left. Chapter 2. And another one. But wait, there's two? Chapter summary. "I'll make sure you get the justice you both deserve," was the only thought in his head as he walked to the police station armed with the list of names. He was seated now with a large mug of coffee in his hands, on a stiff couch, and in an office he was all too familiar with both his husband and Detective Naomaso Takashi. He took a long sip of his coffee, relinquishing in the burn it left as he swallowed, and closed his eyes as he waited for the other two people to come out of their shocked and confused states. So, what did the kid look like? Maybe we can get a match in the system and cross-reference it with, teleportation quirks, or, well, that's all I've got at the moment. Guess he can only have his eyes closed for a few seconds, it seems. As he prized them open to look at his disconcerted husband's face, it wasn't a bad idea, and he turns to Naomaso for confirmation. The detective looks thoughtful and less confused as he originally was when Shota first told them the story of what happened earlier that night. I would maybe broaden the search to quirks that include singing, like a siren song, since you said you couldn't move and it seemed the song had an effect on you. I can also throw in illusion-based quirks too, but that unfortunately may only cause our search to broaden, and a description can only do so much. Where was the building located again? Maybe the kid lives close by, or at least in Musatafu. That could narrow it down at least a little. The detective was already typing away at his computer, probably setting up the search so he can just input the description when Shota was ready. He does as such right away, providing the location of the incident and providing as best of a description as he can. The kid definitely was short, but could have been between the ages of 14 and 15. He had dark, green, maybe black or a mixture of the two, hair that was very curly. His skin was very pale, concerningly so, and he had freckles adorning his cheeks. His eyes were an emerald green, but they looked so dull, like all the life had been drained out of the boy, which didn't help the unsettling feeling in his gut. He could not forget those eyes even if he wanted to, the way they looked so dull and lifeless. They had no light behind them at all until the moment the kid smiled and leaned back and... He shook his head. "Nope, don't really want to remember that right now, thank you." He took another sip of his still hot coffee to ground himself and stay awake, because God, did he just want to sleep. But when he looked up to the detective, he noticed that the clacking of the computer keys had stopped and his hands hovered over the keyboard. Looking at his face, there was a slight frown, and his brows were slightly pinched together in concentration and... Was that confusion? "Naomaso, what's wrong?" Joshi's voice is only tainted with concern, but more curiosity than anything else. "Did you already get a hit?" His brows furrow even more at the question. Yes and no. I'm not sure. I actually know that description. I remember it well, actually. In building. But, well... He trails off, and before Shota can get a word in, he's typing away at his computer again. Shota looks over at his husband, who just shrugs and moves closer to him on the couch, so they can lean against each other. He rests his head on the blonde's shoulder, and closes his eyes as he waits for Naomasa to do his thing, and hopefully either give him answers and allow him to leave so he can sleep, or just send him home and let him sleep and get answers in the morning or something. Either way ends up with him sleeping, so it's a win-win situation on his end. Again, He is not rewarded with rest, as it's only a few minutes later that Naomaso stops typing, and he hears the monitor for the computer being turned. He sighs, then opens his eyes for the second time, and sits up straight, leaving the comfort of his husband's shoulder. He looks at the screen presented to him, and oh, that looks exactly like the kid he saw. So his hair was green, but he looks a little tanner here, not as pale as he thought. Was the kid sick or hurt? The word translucent enters his thoughts and leaves just as abruptly. What's the kid's name? I'm surprised you found him so quickly. But as soon as he finishes his sentence, the picture is gone and replaced with a file taking up the whole screen. He squints and quickly looks for the name. Midoriya Izuku. Huh, what an ironic name. Hisashi must think so too if the small snort is anything to go by. He looks for the quirk registration and freezes. That isn't possible. It would explain why the kid was on the roof, but not the disappearing act at all. Was someone else involved? He's quirkless? Basho said he, well, jumped. But there was no body found afterwards. That has to be false. It doesn't make sense. I know. But it gets a little more complicated. He quickly types out something and the file is gone and replaced with a death certificate. Midoriya Izuku had died 10 months ago on that very building by committing suicide. He hears a sharp intake of breath next to him, and he turns to look at the detective. Because now, he wants answers. What the fuck did he witness tonight if this kid was certifiably dead, with a body and everything? Seemingly reading his mind, Naomaso looks at him and shakes his head. That's why I was confused earlier. I don't know what to tell you. We can open an investigation, but I don't really want to go to the mother and tell her that there is an investigation into someone who might be impersonating her dead son, and to keep an eye out because if you see them, it's not actually them since he's dead. Or that he really isn't dead, and the body you buried could be fake, and now he is terrorizing pro-heroes on patrol. Aizawa grimaced. He seemed to be doing that a lot tonight, and nodded. None of those options sounded good at all. While they could be possible, logically they didn't make sense. Midoriya was dead. He just wants to sleep or drink another cup of coffee. Or both. Yeah, both sounded good right now. Were there any other deaths related to that building? Zashi asked. He gets a questioning look from the detective, but he complies unshockingly, yet not so shockingly. There are. Another kid, Shinso Hitoshi, also committed suicide on the same building about 2 weeks after Midoriya. Apparently, his foster parents were extremely abusive, and when the case was opened after reading the kid's suicide note, they found quirk discrimination along with child abuse and neglect in almost all the foster homes the kid had lived in, all because he had what was deemed a villainous quirk. Shota groans. He hates society. They are discriminatory for no reason. They look down on those who should be treated as equal to them, quirk or no quirk. Villainous quirk or not. Not that a quirk can even be villainous. I'm going home. This is all confusing and I'm tired. I'll keep a lookout for anything weird on patrols for the next few days. But I'm going to chalk this up to me being way too tired or some weird villain's attempt to mess with me. He stood up, and as he did, so did Hisashi and Naomaso. Naomaso bid them good night. They reciprocated as they left his office and headed home. He really needed some sleep. It had been a week since the incident that one quiet night. He did as he promised and kept an eye out for any suspicious villains trying to mess with him, or kids, because at this point, why not? Niamasa didn't have any updates either. Not that he was really looking all too much, since no one really wanted to open an investigation, so his resources were limited. Although the only anonymous source that confirmed the kid had died didn't seem so anonymous to the detective, but familiar instead. Azawa didn't have the mental capacity or time to really dwell on that mystery, with classes starting in a week. It was 45 minutes until the end of his patrol, and he was coming up again on the same building he passes every night. It wasn't originally on his patrol route, but ever since that one night he included the small detour, just in case. I did it, I jumped. That was it. That was a song. Shit. He picked up the pace, panting a little more than usual as his heart raced in his chest. There was a fleeting thought to call someone, but he was too focused on the song to entertain it. As he listened, he realized the voice was wrong. No, not wrong, but different. It was deeper, more alluring, like it made the listener want to just willingly follow what it said. To jump, such a simple command. He blinked, then blinked again when he realized he was already on the roof staring at vaguely familiar violet hair that looked like it defied gravity itself. He felt calm, oddly enough, as he watched the head of hair ever so slightly rock side to side to the very suggestive song. But he also didn't feel completely in control of his body either. So why, when he had just been racing across rooftops, was his heartbeat steady and breathing even? It was at that moment the head of hair turned from facing the view to him. Tired and dead eyes, with eye bags to rival his own, bored into his, and a small uptick of one side of his mouth forming a smirk. Shunsa Hitoshi. He looks just as pale as Midoriya. Again, the word translucent filtered through these thoughts, and was quickly driven away by Aizawa's attention, was yet again commanded by the boy in front of him. I did it, I jumped, I stepped right off that cliff without a parachute. I looked over the edge and saw the view. Another voice joined in at the end of the verse, one he already knew. Of something I can never do. No part of me knew how, but the moment came. He felt himself walk forward towards the two boys, waiting for him at the edge. And it had to be now, so I did it, I jumped. He felt himself turn, back to the edge, and lean back against his will as he watched the two boys look at him with blank faces. I stepped right off that cliff without a para. They both smiled, and he felt himself fall. Shoot. At first he was in shock, as he fell staring up at two pairs of eyes that simply watched him fall. Then he felt the control of his body come back to him as his heart rate appropriately reacted to the situation at hand. He sucked in a breath. The wind was too much in his ears, causing his head to pound, and he tried not to panic.
Bakugo Katsuki, Yano Miyoko, All Might.
His capture weapon snapped out to a nearby lamppost, barely pulling him in on time, as he roughly slammed into the pole, then fell to the ground, very ungracefully, and rolled over once or twice from the leftover momentum. He laid there for what felt like hours, but in reality was only a few minutes. Those names felt like a warning that if he didn't find out how those names connected to those kids, this won't end again like it did tonight. And wasn't that a horrifying thought? That this could happen again. No, that it would happen again. Another horrifying thought then interrupted his mini-crisis, because how the fuck did All Might play into this? Again, his thoughts were interrupted by a buzzing in his pocket. Groaning, he pushed himself up from the ground and sat up, bringing his knees up as well, and resting his elbows on top of them as his hand supported his head. He took a deep and shaky breath, then slowly took out his phone from his pocket and brought it to his ear, as his other hand continued to support his head. Zashi. That's all it took for the blonde to realize a not so very well concealed breath of relief. So, meet me at Neil Moss's office. I'm already here, babe. Good. Because we have some names to look into. And with that, he hung up the phone call and stood. Those kids deserve justice, and he didn't care who he had to go through to accomplish it. Aizawa took one last look at the roof of the building, where he almost met his demise, not only 20 minutes ago, and where this whole thing started. Don't worry, I'll get you your justice. He turned and walked towards the station, armed with the list of names and questions he wanted answers to.